And we will get started. Okay, good morning, guys. Today is July 21st, and I do apologize for having to reschedule yesterday. I was in the middle of the road driving back to San Antonio, so that's kind of why we're delayed here. But anyways, today's kind of going to be full of some good information, I feel, and we're going to be talking about your outs, pretty much how to get out or what are your options for getting out of a contract when you're in a contract. And we're going to kind of take it step by step. And is everybody good with that? Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okie dokie. Okay, so first off, with any contract, we execute it, and then typically we go into our option period, right? That is our get out of jail free card. We pay anywhere from typically about $100 for 10 days, or typically about $10 a day. Some people put more, some people put less, but just depending on how strong you want your offer. If you have a strong offer, maybe put $200-300 for those same 10 days, right? Something to get you better. But that is your get out of jail free card. You can back out at any time during that option period, and then you can get out, no problem, no questions asked, get your earnest money back, and there you go. So besides that, there are other options to get out of the contract once you're past that option period. And I know we get the question quite a bit. Hopefully our buyers don't want to back out too much after that, but it happens, and we need to make sure that we're kind of aware of those things. Every deal is kind of different, so whenever you do hit those options and we need to back out, let me know, and then we can find out and explore our best options for that one scenario. But for the majority of the time, we have our other outs, and that one of them, moving on, is going to be our third-party financing addendum. So that number that you put in there on financing days on the first page at the bottom, where you typically put 21 or 30 days, that's going to be your timing. So from the day you execute, you have 21 to 30 days to make sure that your buyer gets approval from their lender that they can buy the house. If for some reason you are out of option period and you want to back out at that point, contact your lender, tell them, hey, can you give me a letter or something? We don't want the house, we want to back out, just say we didn't qualify. Whatever the case may be, and it's not the most kosher thing to do, but it is looking out for our client, and we want to make sure that they are happy. So we can get out of the contract just by contacting the lender, say, hey, we don't want to move forward. Can you give us a letter stating we didn't qualify? And then based on the third-party financing rules, we are able to get out of the problem. Secondly, for the appraisal, if the appraisal comes back on FHA or VA, that same third-party financing addendum will allow us to either back out of the contract if we don't want to, come up with that difference, if the seller does not want to come down, or the amendment for right to terminate due to lender's appraisal for conventional offers. So if you have any conventional offers, make sure you have that additional addendum attached, because the third-party financing addendum does not cover you if you are conventional. They only cover you if you're FHA or VA on those third-party financing addendums. So be aware of that. If you do any conventional offers, make sure you have that extra addendum attached. And then lender required repairs. So if we're past that, for some reason we're past our third-party financing addendum or our lender's right to terminate, then we need to look for something else. Hopefully the appraisals come back and we already understand where we're at, but if for some reason we haven't extended those timings, and please do, if we're coming up to those timings and we still haven't gotten the appraisal back, we need to extend those things, because appraisal is going to be another one of those qualifications of if they're going to get fully approved, because we don't know if they're going to get approved if the appraisal hasn't came back yet. So if it hasn't came back, make sure to get those things extended. And if for some reason we aren't able to do that and we keep continuing and then the appraisal comes back and it turns out there's lender required repairs, then that's another option to be able to back out. If the seller does not agree, let's say the foundation's messed up and it's going to cost $10,000, or the water heater needs to be raised 18 inches or something along those lines, there's a hole in the siding that needs to be fixed. If for some reason the seller does not want to fix those things, you and your buyers are able to get out. Yes, you're still going to have to pay for your option period, you paid for your inspection period, and then you're also paying for your appraisal. So at that point, you can probably be in the deal about a good $1,000 or so, right? And unfortunately, that's going to be the hit. But at least you can still get your earnest money back and move on and kind of take it from there. You as the agent, maybe help them with another option period, pay for their next inspection, whatever the case may be, to kind of help them out on the deal. And maybe ask the lender, hey, can you pick up their next appraisal, because at this point they're out some money. And just kind of depending, right? It kind of depends on what the deal is and why they backed out. If they're just backing out because they just don't care, then that's something different. Maybe not so nice. But if it's something big, something major that kind of wasn't their fault, yeah, maybe help them out a little bit. It'll just make you look like a good agent and a caring agent. So think about those things. But those are required based on the term, right? Lender required repairs. So if we don't get those things done, the lender's not going to fund, and then we cannot close. So if those lenders don't do it, or if the sellers don't do it, then we still get to back out and get our money back, which is great. Let's see, the seller's disclosure. That's another thing, which is really interesting. So based in the contract, if you do not get your seller's disclosure, there's an automatic, pretty much an option period. So it's the day you get your seller's disclosure, you get an automatic 7 days to review it. Let's say you didn't get an option period, right? We want a 0 option house, and in today's market, that's really competitive, right? If I can get an offer with zero option, then that looks good. If, as a seller, I would want to take that all day. However, when you do submit, let's say on the contract you put seller to provide the seller's disclosure for in 3 days, right? Whatever the timing is, if you check that one and not the buyer received it already, if you've received it, you're accepting it, you're acknowledging it, because then you check that accept as is. But if you check the second box that says the seller needs to send in the seller's disclosure within however many days, and then they send it in, you automatically get 7 days for that review of that of the seller's disclosure. And if for some reason you don't like what's on that seller's disclosure, you can still back out and get your earnest money back, even though you didn't get an option period. Or vice versa, if you did get your option period and you still haven't received your seller's disclosure until after the option period is over, then they send it to you, you still get that same 7 days to review and then terminate if you want. So if for some reason, like the house looks great, nothing's a problem, and later on down the line you realize, oh wow, we never got the seller's disclosure, and then it's maybe 20 days in, 30 days in, and then you finally get it, you still get that time frame to look over that and be able to say, oh wow, that was the previous foundation, or there's a major leak under there we didn't know about, and we get to back out. So that's another thing. If even on the seller's disclosure, you get it, let's say you get it the first day, blah, 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 you move forward, and then you find out something that wasn't on that seller's disclosure, like a previous foundation fix, like they had already pulled an insurance claim, something that they would have known that they didn't put on that seller's disclosure. If you find that out, you are then able to again back out because of misrepresentation of the property. You were not truthful in what you stated in this property, and we no longer want this property due to that fact. So that is another way you can get out, which I would utilize to your advantage. If for some reason something gets hairy, hey, this wasn't disclosed, we need to back out, blah, blah, blah. Sellers can then go and try and fight it and say, no, that's wrong. We're entitled to it. It's just going to kind of depend on how aggressive both sides want to go in getting that earnest money. Sometimes it can get stuck in there for at least 2-3 months if people don't want to make a decision, or if it has to go into mediation, that's another route also, but it just takes a little longer. So if you're, depending on how needy your client is for those funds, always try and get them. We're always going to try and fight for our client, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we are in our correct arguments here. And then let's see, after the seller's disclosure and all those things, so if there was never if it wasn't provided, or two, that something was left off that is now a major issue, we can get our earnest money back. Title. So for title, if they cannot give you clear title, let's say there's a lien that is still going to be on there, or there's a right of redemption, somebody else in the family still has the right to come after it, or whatever the case may be, if that title does not convey that property 100% to your client, that is another option to be able to back out. If they cannot grant you what is stipulated, which is a general warranty deed, that is stipulated on the contract, then they cannot clear that, then you are able to back out as well. So make sure to look for your title, contact your title reps. I know we had Sophia Wilson on Thursday, kind of going briefly into it, but if y'all do want a training on knowing how to read those better, just let me know and we can set those up. We can do it on a Zoom call, or we can have one in person at the office, however y'all want to do it. But I do encourage y'all to know a little bit more on the title side, just so that, because you do have those outs, and for some reason, if there is an issue with it, you know what you're doing and you can get your client's money back, which is great. So if y'all do want a training on that, let me know and we can set that up. I just want to make sure we have enough people to kind of make it worth the time, right? So and then nextly, so seller's defaulting. So if the seller's in default, and if you read the clause in the contract, right, I encourage each and every one of you to read these contracts, because that's what's going to base off how to get out of these contracts, right? If you read it, you understand it, you know where you can and can't push. So for seller's default, if you read the section, it basically says if the buyer's in default, then the seller gets this. If the seller's in default, then the buyer gets this. And there's multiple ways for that seller to be in default. Either they're not able to close on time, if they didn't do the repairs that were requested in the option period, or if they didn't do the lender's required repairs, or if they didn't do a myriad of things, right? They said they were going to do something, they didn't do it. Technically, they're in default then. And with those defaults in that stipulation, there are some remedies. The seller has X amount of days to remedy the issue, or the buyer gets his money back, or vice versa, right? The buyer's in default, then the seller can claim and terminate and get their earnest money back. So finding out where those defaults are is really needed by learning the contracts, right? Reading them, getting to understand them, and knowing when, who, and where at what times people are in default, and knowing your timings, right? Your T47s didn't get pushed out to you, your title commitments, whatever those timings are. If the sellers aren't getting you those things, those are potential outs. If they're waiting for the end of closing to get me my T47 or get me something, then hey, I haven't received it. I don't want to sign off on anything. You need to make sure that you get those things, and vice versa on the selling side. So when you're on the selling side, read those things, make sure you know when those things are necessarily needing to be submitted, so that those buyers can't come back and say, hey, well, you didn't provide me with the survey when you were supposed to, or you didn't provide me with the T47 when you were supposed to, so now we're going to back out. So making sure that you understand those as well, and read those contracts, guys. First and foremost, those are the things that you're filling in the blanks, and you're going off of, you're claiming that you understand very, very well. And for some reason, if you don't, you get stuck in the butt because the other agent knows it better than you, then how is that going to look for you and your client, right? So know those things very, very well. Just sit down. It takes 20 minutes, if that, just to read it, and then go back and fully understand it. Read it every time that you're filling it out. That is the best practice you can, instead of just saying, oh, I know number here, number there, letter here, letter there. Read it again and again. Every time you're filling it out, read what it's saying, because I guarantee you, once you know it better than the other agent, your clients are going to be in a way better position. And we're here to give the best service we can. And then, okay, so agreed upon repairs, we talked about. If they don't do the repairs that were agreed upon, they didn't fix the door like they said, they didn't do whatever they accepted and said they were going to do, then that's an issue, and they're technically in default, and then we can get our earnest money back. Failure to close on time. So if for some reason the seller says, we just can't make it for some reason, we need to do this, we need to do that, and then your buyers, making sure though that your buyers still show up to closing. They show up, they show intent to close, because that's going to be the next thing when we go into mediation and try and get this thing done, is the intent to close. So if your buyers were ready and willing and ready to go and showed up at the title company, and the sellers didn't, for some reason, we got into some sort of argument, or the seller got bad feet or cold feet or something, and they just refused to sell, right? Make sure that your buyers still show up to closing. They still make all the necessary preparations, because that's going to show their intent, that you guys didn't default either, that you guys didn't just go, oh, okay, well, we're not going to close either. And then at that point, you're both in default, because neither one of you showed the intent to close. So that's going to be that stipulation, is the party that is defaulting is going to be the one that didn't show the intent. So if your buyers, you know, the sellers aren't going to close for whatever reason, they're backing out, they want to back out, you need to make sure that your buyers still show that intent, or vice versa. If the buyers for some reason don't want to close, they've got their approvals, they got everything, make sure the sellers then show up and say, hey, you know, we're still here to close. If the buyers aren't, they're in default, and then we're going to terminate after the fact, and then we want to earn this money back. So making sure that your clients understand that, and that you show that intent, because that intent is really what the courts are going to go off of, and that's what's going to show the validity of everything. Okay, and then damage to property beyond repair. So why we do final walkthroughs, right? We do final walkthroughs to, one, make sure the repairs have been done, and to make sure the house is still there. There's been times where there was a thunderstorm, there was a rain the night before the closing, and lightning struck it and the house burned down. So then the clients, oh, we're good to go. We're closing. We saw it last week and we don't need to see it again. So we're just going to head to the closing table. They sign on the dotted line, the lenders fund, then they go to the property and it's burnt down, or it's flooded, or whatever the case may be. At that point, you bought a piece of property, you bought a piece of land, and that is now your responsibility. So making sure that those repairs got done, making sure the house is still there and in good condition, that when you first saw it and when you initially agreed to purchase it, right? Making sure that there aren't holes in the walls, there aren't wires ripped out, because that is a degradation of the property from when you first contracted it. And those are, again, reasons you can back out of the contract. Don't think, oh, just because we're at this point, we have to close. If the repairs weren't done, you do not have to close. If your timings and everything, I know your buyers need to move and all this stuff, that's a different scenario. But at the legality of everything is, you do not have to close. That seller is in default at that time and needs to remedy those issues before you can close, or you get your earnest money back. Bottom line. And then let's see. And the last one, really, if the seller denies access to the property while under contract, right? They don't allow you to get your inspections done. They don't allow you to come and get in the property. They don't allow you to see it visually. Just anything to hinder your ability to make a good decision and a sound decision for that property. Then technically the seller's in default as well, right? They signed an agreement that allows people to come in and out of the property, to show it, to see it, to do their inspections, right? So if they're violating that, then that's another out that you can take. And so yeah, I mean, with those kind of 10 options, I mean, there's quite a bit of options to be able to get out of the deal. So for some reason, any reason that your sellers or buyers are saying, hey, I want to get out, you know, I'm having cold feet, or, you know, my lenders, something, there's an issue, whatever the case may be, let us know. Let's try to combat those objectives. If it's cold feet, why is it cold feet? Understand the client. Don't just say, oh, okay, yeah, let's back out. You know, whatever you want. You know, let's kind of find out why they want to back out, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make you a good salesperson. That's what's going to make you, you know, successful. If you just always let people run you around, then you're never going to get anywhere. But I mean, obviously, you don't want to push anybody, but understand why they do the things they do, and let's help them as best we can. But on the selling side, and majority of these are on the buying side, right? The selling side, you've agreed to the stipulations and you're really not able to back out on the selling side. It's kind of hard. There's the contracts, they're dual contracts, but they're really more favored for the buyer side to be able to back out of the contract. The sellers really don't have much, unless, one, the buyers just weren't able to close on time, and then one or two other things. I'll have to think about those on that side, but it is much harder for the selling side to back out, just because they're the ones accepting that agreement. They're the ones saying, yes, we are going to do these things. We're not going to do these things. And if you don't do those things, then the buyer gets to back out, right? So if that's the case and that's how you want to play it, and the sellers don't want to sell, just don't do the repairs, or just don't do something and say, oh yeah, we're in default, you know, buyer back out, you know, and that's okay. So really, those are my main issues, and our main points for being able to get out of the contract. But my main advice to you guys is just read the contracts and read the addendums every time you fill them out, because you're going to understand them way better than your counterpart, the buyer's agent or the listing agent. You're going to know them much more, and by knowing those contracts, you're going to surprise people, because they're going to go, what? Oh, it doesn't say that. Yes, it does, Mr. Agent. Please go read that. That's what it states, and then you can let your clients know that we expect our earnest money back. So really just understanding those. The knowledge is power, and the more you know, the more you're going to be successful. So I'm going to kind of leave it up to y'all. I'm going to ask if y'all have any questions about anything or any experiences that y'all have had. No? Okay. And then I'm just going to check in on everybody. Miss Leslie, I'm going to call everybody out a little bit one-on-one, just kind of see how everybody's doing, and how can we help, or if anybody, how anybody can help.
Well, I have a question. How long does it take for the appraisal to come in? One of my client wants to know. They want to know when that's coming in, and it's been
Okay.
already. I'm guessing about a week already.
Mm-hmm.
And what do they do with that information? They're the sellers, so they just want. I mean, what's the purpose of them knowing what that is?
So basically, especially right now, real estate's hot, thankfully, and appraisals are hot right now. So what I'm seeing right now for appraisal return, you're looking about 2 weeks, and it's kind of standard in a sense. You can typically get them in a, like, when the market's not so hot, in about 10 days or so. But 2 weeks, 2 to maybe even 2.5 weeks is pretty normal right now, just because of the amount of activity that's happening. Appraisers, they're not as prevalent as they used to be. They don't get paid as much as they used to due to the whole Dodd-Frank Act and a lot more overlay that they had to do. So there's not a whole lot of appraisers wanting to be appraisers anymore. So they're kind of backed up. So give it about 2 to 2.5 weeks, and make sure your lenders understand that, and that everybody understands that timing. So as soon as option's over, or as soon as you get that that amendment signed for the repairs, call the lender, call title, call everybody, say, hey, let's order appraisals now, because those are typically the things that end up holding up the deals. Somebody orders it late, or somebody doesn't order it, and then we're having to extend a week to 2 weeks, or whatever the case may be. That is typically the number one reason why contracts get delayed. So give yourself at least 2 weeks minimum for that time frame. If you know you're gonna keep going with the contract, just call the lender, hey, let's order it today. If the lender already has it. I know some lenders will order it during the option period, and if we have to cancel it, they'll cancel it. So that's another thing you can tell your lenders. And then for the sellers, really the main thing is the value, right? They want to make sure that the house is worth what they're selling it, and then two, to make sure that the square footage. So square footage is another thing. The appraisers retake that square footage every single time they go and appraise the house, and then sometimes there's discrepancies, whether it's more or less, and then there's kind of a change there. So that's kind of the main reason for the appraisal, right? Just finding out the valuation, making sure that we are selling for what we're getting, and that the lender's lending for the value and not of a lesser value, because the lender's never going to give you more money than what the house is worth. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then Mr. Terry, how are you, Mr. Terry?
Oh, doing great. Thank you.
Doing
Yes.
great. How's the tax season going on right now?
Oh man, I'm sorry. Last couple weeks were really tough.
Yeah. So if everybody doesn't know, Mr. Terry Walmsley, he's an accountant and a CPA. So if y'all ever know
No, I'm
anybody's
sorry. I'm
looking,
not a CPA, but I'm doing a degree in accounting. Been doing it over 20 years.
well, he's been doing accounting for over 20 years. So that's also what he does. So if y'all ever have accounting questions or anything, feel free to rely on Terry. I'm kind of putting you on blast, Terry, but
All right.
yeah, if our agents have any questions, we have
Yeah.
a great accountant on staff.
Yes. And if I don't know the answer, I can always find it out. I've got some CPA friends that can do it for free, answer a question for free.
Awesome. Well, that's a great resource to have.
Yes.
James, are you on, or are you on the middle of a delivery? All right, I think James might be in the middle of a delivery. Miss Marta, how's everything going? I know we've been kind of talking over the weekend, but how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you. Yeah, just getting ready for those visitors, showing them houses on Thursday, and I sent you a list of commercial properties they want to see. So I don't know if you're able to line those up for us.
Yeah, I'm gonna start making those phone calls today. I was literally driving for 14 hours yesterday, so I couldn't do too much.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem.
No
We
worries.
still have a little bit of
I'll
time.
start making those phone calls today and start moving those. One thing I did notice that I think one of them was only for sale though. It wasn't for lease. So I know they were looking strictly for a lease, right?
I noticed one was 100% occupied. Is that the one you were talking about?
I think that might be the one. So if it's completely occupied, then that may not be a fit for your guys. But I'll double check.
Yeah, I'll double check. I don't know if they just wanted to check out what the leases look like on that to maybe see if, if any of them were ending to put their stuff in, or, I don't know why they were wanting that one, but I'll find out.
Sure. Okay.
And then I heard from, I don't know if you remember that house in Leon Springs that we were talking about putting up for sale, and they're kind of on hold for a little bit just because they need to sell the father-in-law's property so that they can all move in together.
Oh, okay.
And have a little more income. But the father-in-law's property is more of an investor type deal because it got gutted and never finished. So they live in the casita, not in the main house. And so the main house is the one that needs some investing into.
Okay.
So I don't know. He said they're about 5 months out because they're kind of on hold with something. But I might need your help to find an investor for that property.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, if they're looking for an offer quickly, then that's something we can definitely help them with. I know right now people are still wanting to buy investment properties, so that's not a problem at all. So whenever they're ready to go, I'd love to go take a look at it, and then I can definitely find some people for you.
It's a great house. I mean, it has a casita already. It has a 1-bedroom casita and, a little kitchenette and stuff, living space. And then the main house is pretty big. It just needs some TLC. And, the original thought was that they would fix it and sell it, but then they got hung up on funds and stuff. And so it was just a matter of convincing the father-in-law, like, okay, it's time to move on. Let's get an investor out here.
Yeah.
But it's in Stone Oak. It's in a great area and has great bones. So I'll let you know when that comes up.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, that sounds great. I mean, if we can get that thing sold, that'll just give you a quicker sale for the other one as well.
Exactly.
So just let me know whenever you need me, and then I'll start prepping some people. If you have an address for me, that would be perfect, and I can already start pushing that. And then whenever they're able to let us open up the home to people, then we can already have a waiting list.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, and thank you for helping me for Friday.
Sure, of course. And then I'll check in with you a little bit later. I'll check in with everybody a little bit later, but I'll let y'all go. If y'all don't have any questions, then I wish y'all the best day and upcoming week.
Oh, you know what, Ellen? I forgot to say, I would be interested in that title class with Sophia, just because I don't quite understand that whole process. And I noticed like sometimes somebody will have a general warranty on their house. And then for whatever reason, the seller, like when I look back on BCAD, the seller will end up, or the buyer, I'm sorry, will end up only with a special warranty. So I don't know what happens there in that process.
Sure.
So I'd like to understand a little bit more.
Yeah, I can definitely set that up for you guys. I will send out, we will have I guess a survey sent out to our agents via email to kind of get a full head count. But I mean, Sophia said she'll even do it one-on-one. So if you want to just do it one-on-one, we can do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, if others are interested, that'd be great. But
when you guys, I'll do it too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, well then that sounds great. And then I will go ahead and set that up, and then I will let everybody know once we have a date.
All right, thank you, Alan.
Of course, you guys have a great one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.